the icon for sure. You talk about, a guy like John Smith and what he was able to accomplish as an athlete, and it sparked my interest a lot. But when you talk about, a role model, someone that I looked up to and aspired to be like, not to get too sentimental, but I mean, that was my dad. My dad was a major influence in my life, and I am the person I am today because of him.
I'm on the road again, half drunk with a lit cigarette. I don't know when I'll be back in this town. At least that's what I tell her. Baby, I'm just saying, maybe I just think too much. I'm leaving in the AM. Baby, are you staying? I know that you drank too much. And this is what she said to me. I'm just your ordinary fuck. There's nothing special about me. I still bump my more night when I get drunk. I'm just telling you, I'm not playing you. I just wanna be the real me around you. The real me around you.
But I honestly remember the night you won your first national championship.
Oh, wow.
I was at a buddy's house. Well, because you guys won the team too. Mm-hmm. And we were watching a pay-per-view boxing fight at 14 years old.
That's
and I remember we threw $10 in a guy and whatever, and we're at a buddy's place, and we kept flipping back and forth anytime a Gopher was wrestling. And we kind of cared about the other matches, but we were just like, and
That's funny.
and yeah, I mean, well, there's a whole generation of kids from Minnesota or anywhere. I mean, the Midwest is wrestling rich,
Mm-hmm.
you know that. But before you guys kind of had your heyday there, I mean, there's some history, but those are probably the glory years of Minnesota wrestling.
I like to think so.
Right.
I do. When people ask, I tell them I lived in the glory days of Minnesota wrestling. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of people before me and our time, but some of the things that we did, I mean, they've never been done before. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to be a part of something historic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and so we're just going to kind of go a timeline type situation. So you're from New Jersey.
Yep.
And was wrestling the only sport you did, or did you do anything else as a kid? Or
So, growing up, I started doing a couple different things. I started with baseball and then soccer and football. And so when I got into soccer, I remember I was a big kid. I wasn't, I was in second grade. I was 100 pounds, so I was big. And I remember the coach talking to my parents because on the soccer field, I'd run, I'd go after the ball. If I knocked you over, oh well, I get the ball, I kick it away. And the soccer coach said something to my parents. It was like, "Have you ever thought about football for Damion?" And so we got into football, and I did that for a handful of years, and then I got into wrestling, and I just loved it. It was different than anything I've ever done.
and were you successful right away as a kid?
Well, early on in my career, yeah, but not right off the start because I was big. And, a lot of people have heard the story, but I came home one day with a flyer, and it said, I lived in the town of Jackson at the time, and it said Jackson Recreation Wrestling. And I brought it home to my parents, and I was like, "Man, sign me up!" I'm doing this. I thought it was professional wrestling. I'm telling my mom and my dad I'm going to jump off the top ropes. I'm going to drop elbows and hit a dude with a chair. And I remember my mom saying, "Yeah, it's not that kind of wrestling. It's very different." I go, "I don't care. I'm going to drop kick somebody. Sign me up." So when she brought me, we walked in, and it was at the high school, and there's literally just 2 mats on the ground, and I looked over and I go, "Where's the ring and the ropes?" And she's like, "I told you it's not that kind of wrestling." And I'm like, "Well, this is dumb. I don't want to do this." And she was like, "Well, we're here. We're going to sign you up." And so they signed me up. I got my butt kicked a lot because there was nobody around my age in the same weight. So I remember working out, or my partner was like the high school 103 pounder at the time. And I got my butt kicked a lot. I didn't like that. And but it made me want to be better. And I remember my first year was a lot of practice. I don't know if I competed that first year. Maybe once in a duel, in our team duel. And then from there, my parents started getting more involved, and I think I went to a handful of tournaments the next year, and I started kind of having some success. I mean, at that age, how many other kids are that size? So I remember going to tournaments, and it was the greatest thing ever because I got to hang out with my friends all day long. I mean, forget the wrestling side of it. We were running around the school and the gym, and we'd be eating cafeteria food, and then we couldn't wait for the next break because we had a football. We were tackling each other on the mats, and then, I was a heavyweight, so I'd wait around all day, and I go out there and throw a headlock and, try and pin the guy in the first 5-10 seconds. And, hey, everything's great, So I had success because, one, I loved to compete. That's why I was involved in some of the sports I was in. And ultimately, I just went with wrestling because it was solely on you when you were out there. So I started having some success, and when that happened, man, I loved it. I loved every second of it, and I wanted more. And so, did my parents push me a little bit and nudge me in the direction? For sure. I think most parents do that, but I wanted it because I loved, and maybe this is kind of a narcissistic thing, but I loved the feeling that you got when you went out there and you performed and you won. Like there was nothing greater. So, yeah, I guess success came early on in my career, but it wasn't a force from the outside per se.
Right.
I wanted it, and hey, then I devoted everything I had to wrestling, and yeah, man, and the rest is history. So it was a lot of fun.
Did you have any kind of role models growing up that the New Jersey area in wrestling? And New Jersey itself, just growing up in the Midwest, I look at it as it's like a tough guy state. There was Chuck Wepner and Jersey Joe Walcott, and there's all these boxers and Reuben Carter, and even Diamond Dallas Page is from New Jersey.
There you go.
There's these guys, and it just seems like kind of a tough guy. You kind of got every mafia movie, they're crossing the state lines to New Jersey.
Oh, that's funny.
And I just think of, was there a wrestler when you were a kid that you guys would go to meets in high school or otherwise like college or look up to?
So it's funny you ask because you look at today. You pick up that little computer on that table and you can look at anything you want. There was not that wasn't the case. When I was growing up, we didn't get our first computer until I was in high school, and I can still remember the AOL dial-up, and so if you wanted to see results, you waited to the weekend and you got the box scores that came out, and you couldn't wait to open up the newspaper and see, okay, who won, or if there was an article written, and what were they going to say? So for me, we didn't have a whole lot of exposure to the elite. my first exposure to an elite wrestler per se, it was in 1988, and I think this might be everybody's I want to say role model or favorite wrestler. Or I was 1988, and I'm sitting in my parents' bedroom, and we're watching the Olympics, and wrestling came on, and it was John Smith, and John Smith wins his first gold medal. And I remember being like, that's going to be me someday. And so maybe just from an icon kind of perspective, John kind of sparked my interest in a lot of sense. But again, I mean, that was the first time I ever seen him wrestle, and I probably didn't see him wrestle until, I don't know, I was probably in high school on VHS or something like that. So,
Yeah.
You had Rutgers, you had Princeton, you had Rider, and some of these other schools, but wrestling at the collegiate level in New Jersey wasn't very big, or I don't say very big. It just wasn't. You had two schools. You had Iowa and Oklahoma State. I mean, that's what everybody kind of followed. And we weren't very close to those two, so I never saw a college match until I think I went to college. So I mean, I didn't see any college wrestling because when colleges were competing, I was competing. Growing up, I was gone every weekend, wrestling. In high school, we were wrestling every weekend. So I never really got over to see any college matches. And so the icon, for sure, you talk about, a guy like John Smith and what he was able to accomplish as an athlete, and it sparked my interest a lot. But when you talk about, a role model, someone that I looked up to and aspired to be like, not to get too sentimental, but I mean, that was my dad, My dad was a major influence in my life, and I am the person I am today because of him. He was an interesting man. He did a lot of things. He was a coach. I mean, he owned a couple businesses, and he literally just devoted his time to giving back to these kids. And maybe that's why I do what I do today. But yeah, you talk about a role model. I mean, he was my role model. He was in all regard. I mean, a superhero to me, and he was the one person that I never wanted to disappoint. I always wanted to please, and I wanted to be like, because he could do no wrong. And so, yeah, it's kind of an interesting dynamic. I think a lot of kids today, they look at, okay, the LeBron James, or who's the a quarterback, Mahomes, or and I think we lose sight of why do we do what we do, right? I feel we are in a sport that is. I mean, look, I joke around about this, about how grueling and tough our sport is. It's we try to make it as fun as we possibly can, but it's not a game. I mean, this is a hard frickin' sport. You tell me the last time you were hanging out at your buddy's house and you're like, hey, you want to go out on the front lawn and throw each other around? No, you don't do that, right? But you go, hey, you want to go throw a football?
Yep.
You want to go shoot some hoops? Hey, let's go hit some balls. You know what I mean? Like those are fun. You're not like, hey, let's go kick the snot out of each other on the front lawn. That just doesn't happen. And so,
I always tell people the same thing. I'm like, wrestling, it's not fun. And these guys that are doing this are dedicated on a level you don't understand. Yeah. And then they're not having fun, but getting their hand raised and the blood, sweat, and tears, and you see the guys passing out on the mat, bawling. I mean, there's nothing. I'll cry at home watching these matches. When somebody's just like that Gable Stevenson taking off his shoes, that was just kind of a neat moment in sports.
Absolutely.
Because, that last second takedown in the Olympics, and then this happens. I mean, I don't know how many eyes that brought to the sport, but it had to just give something.
I hope so.
Right.
And because I feel like wrestling is such an underrated from a popularity standpoint. I mean, for all the time and effort, and not to diminish anything any other sport does or has done. But when you throw in all the dynamics, right? All the dynamics of what wrestlers have to do from, just managing your weight, right? And cutting weight, and then having to go out and perform. Like, this isn't MMA where you get 24-hour weigh-ins. This isn't, football, basketball, baseball, or whatever, where like, hey, it's a team meal the night before or a team breakfast and everybody's, eating and feeling great and happy and hydrated. No, these guys are miserable.
Right.
Miserable all the damn time, and going out there and having to perform. So I feel like some of the time, we lose a little bit of sight of why do we do what we do, right? Why do these people compete? Why do these people, train, and who do they idolize? I mean, I think we do things for the wrong reasons, right? I mean, I would love to talk to a kid and you say, hey, who's your favorite athlete? And they throw out, some superstar. And why? Well, I can guarantee you they'll name more things that they have than what they have actually done, because they're focused on the wrong things. Yeah. And that's to me, I mean, I don't want to see that. I want to see kids fully invested or care about the process and what goes into becoming a successful is such a you can base success off anything, right? But look into that process and devote that time and effort, because I'll tell you right now, it is sports in general. I think wrestling above all and beyond, but sports in general, it lays a foundation for the rest of your life if you apply it in the right way. If we're doing it for the wrong reasons, then man, you're never going to learn, the lessons that sports can teach you. But if we're doing it for the right reasons, goodness gracious, I mean, I apply everything in my life, how I raise my kids, my marriage, my student athletes, to all the lessons that I have learned in this phenomenal sport. So, yeah, man, I mean, like,
do you ever just go like, some point in life, you're just like, man, this sucks, and then you just think back to just the worst practice you ever been to that Jay Robinson put you through, and just go like, nothing can be worse than, or anything like that. You know what I mean?
There are countless times where, I mean, you are life punches you in the face, right? And you're just, what the hell just happened? On a number of different things. I mean, it could be being a coach. It could have been being a student athlete. Hell, relationships. And you're just like amazed. And like, I can't believe this just happened. And then you look back and you look at the journey that you've been on, and you can account for how many more times that you've been in worse. You've felt terrible. You've been faced with adversity, and because of this sport, you have learned to overcome. And it's like, okay, you pick yourself back up, you dust yourself off, and you keep going. Like, that's what we do,
For sure.
And so, yeah, man, I've been there. I've been there, and you get back on that horse and you give it another go around. It's like, there's no quit. So that's one thing that I think sports, but above all wrestling, has taught me, and it's a life lesson that I'll never take for granted.
For sure. Yeah. I always find, elite wrestlers seem to be some of the most disciplined athletes, because it's not, you don't have to, you don't just show up. Everything starts before then. Your weight cutting, everything. Mentally, it's, it's a mental breakdown game. But you don't see too much headlines about wrestlers doing too much, and when you do, it's just fleeting. It's just it's an offshoot. It's a disciplined sport with disciplined people. I listened to one thing one time that almost made me exhausted when John Smith was talking about when he I don't know if it was before Worlds or before the Olympics, but he realized he wasn't who he was.
Yeah.
So he said he cut his phone line. I think he literally cut it.
Probably.
And then he didn't talk to family, broke up with his girlfriend, the whole deal, for 3 months, and lived with 2 other training partners. And he said he saw what the Russians were living in, and he goes, he saw how hard those guys were, like, trying to dig themselves out of something. Mm-hmm. But he goes, there's no way I'm going to go over there with all the, I don't know if he had the shoe line yet, but he had tapes out and he was making good money. And he was like, I got to get rid of the glam because I need to go back to the grind because I can't. How am I going to beat one of those guys living in a tin shack with all this,
It's funny you say that because I've been very fortunate in my life in the sense of being able to travel and compete and wrestle around the world. And, I've been to some parts of this world that are not nice. And, practically third world countries. And I remember when I was still competing after college, and you run into people, and they'll be like, what do you do, or whatever, or they know you're wrestling, and they're like, hey, where are you going this trip? I'm like, I'm going over to Russia, or you're going to France, or you're going to Dagestan, and they're like, oh my, you are so lucky. Like, you get to see the world, and I'm sure it's fun. And I'm like, come with me one time and stay in some of these places. Like, we take for granted as Americans in general, like, the things that we have. And then when we go over, and I was never at John's level, but I can relate. You go over to some of these places and they have nothing. They literally have nothing. And if they don't compete and if they don't win, they don't eat. Their families don't get taken care of. Like, I don't want to say, I don't want to be like completely over dramatic about, life, it's life or death, but darn, man, this is how they support their families. Mm-hmm. And, we go over there and we compete, or we compete here, and then win or lose, a lot of us still have mom and dad, hey man, it's okay. And you're going to go home and you're going to eat a hot meal and you're going to put on the TV and you're going to watch this. For some of the kids, they might pick up their gaming console or that little computer that you have sitting on the table right there and play on their phone. Like, a lot of people don't have those privileges. Mm-hmm. And so when you see that little tidbit story, he is 100% right.
Yeah.
You look at some of the environments that these people not only live in but train in, and you're like, wow, how is that possible? And then over here in America, it's like, hey, we got to have the new shiny bike. And we got to have the biggest, glamorous, this, that, and the other thing. And is it nice to have? For sure it is. But do you need it? Do you need it to be successful? Because you look at some of these places. Go down to Cuba. Go down to Cuba and work out in their training facilities. And literally, they got a mat that's pieced together. And this is like the Olympic training center down there. Mm-hmm. They have, for a weight room, okay, there's a bench. Like, some of these places don't have the resources that, we do, and they're still successful. And so that's kind of unique for a lot of us. And to hear, you mentioned it about John, it's just like, yeah, he's 100%. Spot on with, his thought process, because sometimes you got to kind of block out all that white noise to be able to kind of see what you're going after. And there's not too many people that have ever done it better. That's why he's who he is. And he's freaking awesome. Let's just be honest.
Right.
You know?
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, so Minnesota, how did you end up at Minnesota? Was Marty Morgan or was it like Jay Robinson contacting you? Or
So Marty recruited me. A little funny story was Minnesota. I remember this to this day. So there were two schools, my first two letters that I ever received from colleges, and one was Army West Point, and the coach there, we kind of had a connection with, a family connection, and then the other letter was the University of Minnesota. Now, granted, I didn't know a whole lot about collegiate wrestling. There was no flow, intermat, all of that stuff. So we didn't see a whole lot. Again, I knew of two programs really that if these were the two best, Iowa and Oklahoma State. That's it. And so I get this letter, and it had, the University M on it, and I didn't know what it was, and I'm like, okay. So I open it up, and I'm reading it, and it's a letter from Minnesota, and I'm like, Minnesota? It's like, they have wrestling out there? Like, oh my God! Like,
that's Siberia to you.
I had no idea.
Right.
You could have told me, Damion, there are literally two schools in the country, and they just wrestle each other all the time, and it's Oklahoma State and Iowa. I would have said, oh yeah, okay, great. So that was one of the first letters I got, and me being young and dumb, I'm like, Minnesota? I'm like, yeah, I never heard of them. I was like, I'm not going there. And I just kind of put it off to the side. Well, Marty, he kept in contact, and he kept sending letters. And when you got back then, it was like, July 1st hit of in between your junior and senior year, and you were able to make phone calls, and he started calling. And I remember him, he was at the state tournament, and he was kind of stalking me a little bit, and that's what, we all do. And we started to kind of talk and build a relationship, and I opened my eyes and really kind of started putting some things down and really making me think about what's next in my career. So it came down to me. It came down for me. It was Oklahoma State and Minnesota. Oh. And that's kind of ultimately where it came down to. I
don't think there's too many guys that pick Minnesota over Oklahoma State,
Yeah. And honestly, especially at that time, because, right. Minnesota hadn't won a national title. Minnesota was kind of up and coming, and, they placed a couple times, but they haven't won it yet. Mm-hmm. And, I took all my visits. I took unofficial visits. I saw it all. Mm-hmm. And it came down to Minnesota and Oklahoma State. And for me, I joke about it. And my parents, they were heavily involved in my life and in everything. And so I remember coming back from visits and sitting down with my parents, and I was a kid, and every trip I went on, I came home and I'm like, oh, I'm going there. That was awesome. They got this and they got that. And I remember my dad, he'd be like, well, just we'll take your trips, and then, you can sit down and go over it all. Oh, I don't care. I'm going to that school. That school was the best. And then I go on the next trip, and I come home. Oh my goodness. That place was amazing. And I'd start talking about that school, and then he would quickly bring back, well, what about the other school? And they had this, this, and this, where this school doesn't have that, that, and that. And so every time he made it very confusing for me. He made me think in great detail about what really mattered to me. And at the end of the day, when it came down to those two schools, I like to think that I chose to go to the University of Minnesota for a lot of factors. But looking back now, we're talking 20 some odd years. I sit here and I say, wow, they wanted the University of Minnesota, and they Jedi mind tricked me into choosing the University of Minnesota. I felt like I chose it, and if I were to go back 20 plus years, I'd do the same thing. I'd go to the University of Minnesota. But I think as much as we say, hey, this is little Johnny's decision, no. You are not going to let your child make a bad decision, right? And not to say that Oklahoma State would have been a bad decision, but we are going to, as parents, we are going to have influence over our kids. And you know what you like. My parents knew what they liked. They knew the people involved. And I think my parents felt comfortable, maybe more comfortable with a Jay Robinson and a Marty Morgan over another staff, because I was raised a certain way. I mean, my dad, he was raised with tough love, and it was you do what you're told. I mean, you don't question authority. I mean, like, these are the things that you respect and all that. And Jay was ex-military. He's an ex-Army Ranger, and he ran a tight ship. And that's kind of, hey, when my dad said jump, we all said how high. Even the dog, stood up. So I think my parents were comfortable with that, because I'm the oldest in the family. I'm the first college graduate in my family, and first to go to college. And so, and we're not talking about Rutgers here, which is a half hour down the road. This is 20 hours. It's in the middle of the country, and my parents wouldn't be there. So I think being able to trust another person, another community, another family to raise their boy was important to them. And they had trust and belief in Jay and Marty and that staff and that program. So I like to think I chose it. I think it was heavily influenced. But yeah, it fit me. It fit me. And the one thing that I always look back and remember, we were a family. We were a family. We were a band of brothers. And that is one thing that, whether I was at Cornell after I left or here, at South Dakota State, that culture, that's the culture we want. And we want that family. And I think it's important because you're dealing with 18 to 22, 23. I mean, heck, look at this year's national tournament. You might have 26-year-olds on your team. But you're dealing with young people at a critical age, I think, that they're kind of coming into their own. And you want to make sure that they are surrounded by good people. And that's what I had. That's what I had in my college experience. So it was good. It was good. That's why I chose Minnesota.
Awesome. Well, so you're a 2-time national champ, 3-time Big Ten champ, 4-time All-American. And then the funny thing is, you said that you used to try to headlock a kid and pin him in 5 seconds, but you were kind of known for grinding it out and kind of having a gas tank and getting a takedown with like 5 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you beat Daniel Cormier your freshman year, true freshman year, right?
Not my true freshman year, but
because you JUCO'd.
He JUCO'd.
Oh, he did.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And so I was a redshirt freshman, and then he was a junior. Yeah, he was a junior, and we actually wrestled twice, and we split. He beat the ever living snot out of me in a home duel, and this was my freshman year. was Oklahoma State versus Minnesota, 1 versus 2 in the country it was team, and I forget where I saw it. I don't know if they put out their predictions. I don't even know if online was a thing yet, but they put out their predictions, and they said Oklahoma State was going to beat us. And they went match by match, and they had me losing to Cormier, and it was like 5-3 or 5-4 or something like that. I was ranked like 5th, 6th in the country, and he was like 2 or 3 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I remember us sitting back and joking about all the scores, and we're like, well, hell, man, we don't even need to wrestle, you know? And, well, I would have taken that score that was in the paper or online because I got the ever-living snot beaten out of me. I lost, it was either 19-8 or 18-7. I mean, it was one of the worst matches of my life in the sense of how I felt, how bad I got beat. I'd never been beat that bad before. Mm-hmm. And we've all been there. We've all been in those matches where, you know, it's just one thing after the next. It's not going your way. And whatever's happening, you look over at the clock and you can see how much time's on that clock, and you're like, damn, there's that much time. Yeah. And then you go out there and you're wrestling and you feel like you've wrestled another, 20, 30 minutes. You look over and it's like, holy hell, that was only 10 seconds. Like it's just like it's never ending. And he just beat me up. And so lost that match. We lost the duel. We got stomped. And then 2 weeks later, we were at national duels. We go to national duels, and it's Minnesota, Okie State in the finals. And it's funny, we were at the nationals this past weekend, and Cormier was commentating, and I ran into him. Yeah. I ran into him Saturday night, and literally we were talking about what we're talking about right now. And he was like, "Remember, you beat me at national duels." And literally, so 2 weeks later, I beat him. And I mean, I reversed like a 9-10 point swing, and I got a last second takedown to beat him, and we won the national duels. I won, and then Owen Elson I think won, and Garrett Lowney won, and so it just, yeah, he put the beat down on me. We split in college, and then after that, he kept me off every world and Olympic team. I was the alternate in 8, 7, 6. Because he was the guy. And I was joking with him last weekend, and I said to him, I go, I had success because for a bigger guy, like I could wrestle, right? I was pretty athletic. I can do some things that other guys couldn't. I didn't get tired. I was pretty strong. And I'm standing with Daniel and Jamil Kelly, and I was like, the only problem is you were pretty athletic, you were pretty strong, and you didn't get tired. All things that I didn't do, but you had a little bit more edge than I did. And he kept me off a lot of teams. And I'm telling you, Daniel's an awesome dude. And he's tough. Like, I've wrestled a lot of people, and man, he's just got this ability. He's an athlete, and he's freaking good. I mean, that's one of my worst beatdowns in my career. Was
he your last match you ever wrestled in any level?
Yep.
So I believe that was a final to go to be on the U.S. team, right?
Yep. That was the Olympic trials finals.
And I mean, anytime there's an end to something, I mean, and a person's at a crossroads, I mean, was that devastating? Like, what did you go through did you know that was going to be the last time you'd wrestled, or did you plan on trying another cycle, or or were you ready? Was that just, you knew?
I was torn because I was coaching and I was training. Mm-hmm. And there was a point in my coaching and while I was training, my passion started to shift. I would have to leave. I was at Cornell at the time. I started out at Minnesota, and I was helping out the program and training, and then I got an opportunity to coach out back east at Cornell in upstate New York in 05-06, and then I started coaching the 06-07 season, and I loved competing. I still had that desire, that urge, and so I was competing and coaching, and I started to see things shift in my priorities, right, where my passion was leading me. I remember being overseas and being on a trip. It would be during the season, and I couldn't help but just feel bad because I had guys that I was coaching back east, or I'm sorry, back west, back in the States, that I try and find results. How are they doing? Try to contact them, just, and my priorities weren't in the right place. If I want to be the athlete that I want to be, I need to be a lot more selfish, and I wasn't being selfish. So, when my priorities started to shift, I knew I was going to finish out that cycle and see how it was going to play out. I ended up being the alternate in 08. I knew deep down that this was probably it, but admitting it to
yourself,
admitting it to myself and actually saying those words, that gets tough. And so I knew deep down that 08 after wrestling Cormier, the best 2 out of 3, I knew that was probably the end. But I've already entrenched myself into coaching and giving back to these student athletes, that I felt good about my decision because I was doing it for the right reasons, right? I was getting back into, or not getting back into, but continuing this path, this journey that has really brought me to this point that I'm at right now. So, yeah, it was. I knew deep down, but again, it's hard to say, hey, man. It's one thing when, okay, you're in college, you're in high school, and hey, listen, I can't delay my graduation anymore. I mean, I graduate, I move on. But with the international style, you can really compete as long as your body and as long as the competitiveness that you have is for a long time. I mean, you look at some of these guys. I don't know how old Jordan Burroughs is. I mean, I think he's in his 30s and he's competing. I think he's one of the few that compete that long. But I mean, we've seen guys competing into their 30s, and I was done at 28. Was it too soon, too young? I don't know, but I think when you know, and I had that. I don't want to call it a backup plan, but I knew what my passion was, and I knew the direction it was going. So it was the right time. It was.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's what I was going to ask you, is basically, did you know coaching was kind of what you were getting into, but you were already kind of doing both.
Yeah.
Which you do see that with assistant coaches and stuff. Some other places,
yeah.
They have a wrestling club within the university, and they're kind of doing a little bit of both. But I think at one point, to simplify, and they know that everything's kind of finite,
Yeah, and so I went to college for education. I wanted to be a teacher. That's what the goal was. And while I was in college, we started kind of helping out with some clubs and, kind of doing all those things, and had the ability to work with kids, and I really liked it. It was fun. And watching my coaches in college and seeing their lives and how dedicated they were to us, really kind of, I'm gonna say, shifted some of my thoughts and my goals. But I started kind of thinking about, wow, let's maybe give this a shot. And I thought I had a good head on my shoulders, in the sense of, from a visual standpoint, right? I could watch stuff and figure it out. And when you're coaching and trying to teach, or trying to talk about or lay down life lessons, you got to be able to watch and pay attention to a lot of the little intricacies, because everybody's different, right? Not every two people are the same, and everybody needs something a little bit different. So I think a little bit of my educational background helped me. Being around great mentors helped me, and Jay and Marty and Schwab and Russell and those guys. But yeah, I mean, it was just, today, things are a little bit different. You have guys that are just training, and that's their job, and that's awesome for them, right? We didn't really have that ability in my time. I mean, you always had something you were whether you were helping out on a staff here, you were or coaching there, training here. And I mean, back when I was coming through, and I didn't do it, but my teammate Jared Lawrence, I mean, Home Depot used to employ Olympic hopefuls, and they would put you on a part-time 20-hour-a-week deal. And I remember Jared, I mean, he was like mixing and selling paint at Home Depot, and then coming over and working out. I mean, that's just what we did.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, these kids today, I mean, some of them are just training full-time and making good money.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different than what we had. But then you have the ones that they put their education, I guess you could say, to use. I mean, they've got their business degrees, or they've got a medical background, and when wrestling is done, they go on and they look at going out into the world and starting their next career. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it, for sure. I don't think we had some of the same, I don't want to say opportunities, but yeah, it would be hard pressed just to train and do nothing else, to support yourself. Nowadays it's made a little bit easier for the guys.
For sure. Yeah. So as a Jackrabbit Wrestling fan, I guess I've never been a fan of just a program that's already established. I'm not a Yankee fan. I don't care if they win their 86th. It's just. But it's cool to see a program being built and kind of knowing the trajectory of it, because, if I was a high school kid in the Midwest, I would want to come wrestle for you. I mean, you bring kind of youth to the program. You also, so when Bono left, I think this fan base was like, oh, who are we going to get now?
Yeah.
That guy kind of reinvigorated something.
For sure.
And I thought, yeah, no, okay, back to winning 3 duels a year, And they signed you, and I think everybody was like, game on, And were you just looking for any head coaching job, or did you have kind of some options to look at, or?
So I was at Cornell for 12 and a half years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, the plan was to take over for Rob Cole when he was done.
Mm-hmm.
And he named me an associate head coach. I don't remember what year it was, and I told him, I said, Rob, man, if you do this, I'm never leaving. I'm staying. And he was like, Damion, that means a lot to me, but never say never. And I go, what do you mean? He's like, I'm just saying, there might be an opportunity out there for you that, you can't pass up. And I'm like, what, do you not want me to take over for you? Is that what you're telling me? And he's like, no, not at all. So we've had long conversations, and there were opportunities along the way that places called, and some I said flat out no. There were a couple that were kind of intriguing, I guess you could say, but after 12 years. Me and we left Minnesota. It was me and my wife, Terry, and we moved to New York. And now, granted, it's a little bit closer to my family. It's about 5.5 hours away, but it was just us. And, we bought a house, we started a family. We both got entrenched in the community. I worked for Cornell. She was working for Cornell. I mean, we were like established, and I didn't think we were ever going to leave. And I told her, I said, babe, listen, if there's ever an opportunity for us to get back to the Midwest, and it worked for us, I was like, we'll look at it. We will really look at it, because my wife has had her career, but it's always been with me, per se. Like we stayed in Minnesota a lot because I was training, and then we left Minnesota to go to New York because of me, and she made it work. She's been an absolute trooper through this whole process, and so I always told her, I said, listen, if there's ever an opportunity, we'll look. And I got a phone call from South Dakota State, Justin Sell, and he calls me up, and I get off the phone with him. My wife was like, who's that? And I was like, oh, that was the AD at South Dakota State. And she's like, oh, really? She's like, how'd it go? And I was like, that guy's kind of awesome. Like just his excitement and his passion, how he communicates. So now my wife's from northern Minnesota, mind you. So
where's she from in northern Minnesota?
Okay, if you know the town, I'll be surprised. I say this to everybody because it's a town of 400 people.
Yep.
It's Pengilly.
Oh, man.
So Pengilly.
Is that northwestern?
So no, it's actually in between Duluth and Grand Rapids. So
okay, yeah, I never have.
You go straight up 65,
yep.
and you go right through the town. If you blink, you miss it.
Yep.
And she lives on a lake. It's a lake community, but her parents decided to live there year round. She went to a regional school, but I told her, so her being from Minnesota, I was like, we'll see. And so I got off the phone with Justin, and Justin wanted me to come out and take a look. And I think the best things in life are kind of unexpected. I came out, I had no idea. I never stepped foot in the state of South Dakota until I came out here and looked at this job. Even though I wrestled in Minnesota, I spent more time, and I know Fargo better than the entire state of South Dakota, just because, that's where junior nationals were every year. We went there every darn summer. And so, again, never been to South Dakota. I kind of had an idea what to expect. You're in the plains. It's very big ag. And so coming out here, it was pretty much spot on. And then walking around and seeing the facilities and looking at the future and what is to come, and making connections and correlations with the area back to Cornell, and seeing the similarities. And I was just like, wow, this is I wasn't expecting to have this such a connection, I guess you can say. And then we sat down, and it was hard. It was really hard because, over here I got an opportunity sitting in front of me, and it was a head coaching job at a place that I think can be unbelievably successful, closer for my wife to her family, an opportunity to get back into the Midwest, which I love the Midwest. And now over here, I got, a dozen plus years that we've built something at Cornell. And, I think out of those 12 years, 11 of them, we were top 10 programs. And, you talk about taking second a couple times, third, fourth, fifth. And we had it rolling. And so it was hard. And sitting down with Rob, he's someone that I respect immensely. He came into a point in my life. He came into a point in my life, in my competitive and coaching career. My father passed away. I was 25 years old, 26 years old, and my father passed away. And Rob came into my life at a point where, he's like a father figure to me, and he's helped me and mentored me, and he's given me a lot. And sitting down with him and going through this and saying, hey, these are the opportunities and everything. And Rob made it really difficult on me, as he should have. He didn't want me to leave, but he understood it. And and you take this opportunity and you come out to the Midwest, and hats off to Chris and what he did here before. I think a lot of people look at it and say, wow, 12th, 13th in the country. God, that's the ceiling. And I disagree. I do, because I see what maybe some of the other people don't see. I see the support that is here. I see the community aspect. There are very few places in the country that you can go to a dual meet and you're getting, a couple thousand people in the stands. Like, that doesn't happen all over the country. And I'm talking in a town that has 20,000+ residents, and when you throw the students in there, you're hitting 35,000. Go to not to say Minnesota, for instance, but go to Minnesota. They're in a city of how many million? A million plus between St. Paul, Minneapolis, and listen, if we're only getting 5,000 people, 4,000 people, that's kind of a disappointment, right?
Right.
When you put 10% of the town's population in the stands, that's pretty freaking cool.
Right.
So I think Brookings is unique in a lot of sense.
Yes.
And you can recruit a individual in some regard, like the kids we were recruiting at Cornell, because Cornell is big ag. They had a big ag school, and you were able to use that and kind of get into some of these areas throughout the country. So looking at it, I said, 12th, 13th in the country, that's not the ceiling. I was like, that is, that's a benchmark that we're gonna get to and surpass. And it takes time. It takes time to do so. We weren't, when we got here 4 years ago, it'll be 4 years this summer, when we got here 4 years ago, we were rebuilding. We weren't left with a whole lot. We had 14 guys on the team. That was it. And so we had to rebuild. And we started recruiting, and we started fundraising, and getting we didn't have a club, we didn't have an RTC, up and running, and we got our RTC going. We started fundraising for our facility, and so in the last 4 years, the hurdles that we've had to kind of overcome in some sense and lay down a foundation. It wasn't like we were handed a program that, hey, here you go, step right in and you're a top 10. Heck, no. I mean, I told Cam, Cody, those guys have been with me from the beginning. And, I told them, I said, listen, guys, whatever, at the end of the day, when all is said and done, and I believe we will be successful, I said, we can hang our hats and say, hey, we did this. We built this. Nobody else. And that's something special, right? Something to be proud of. And I mean, you look at over the course of the 4 years that we've been here, and nothing has been normal.
Yeah.
I mean, first year, it is what it is. Second year, NCAA gets canceled. Last year, COVID's still around, and they don't even start until January, and you got like 10 fans at the NCAA tournament. This year, we have cancellations again. We've had crazy travel. They have a national tournament that actually has fans. So nothing has been normal. Just give me one frickin' season where it's a normal year, and it'll be fun. So it's been a process. It's been a grind over the course of a handful of years, and I see so much. I don't know if potential is the right word, but I see the direction that this program is going, and with any business, with any anything, you make little tweaks, right? You don't revamp things. I mean, you have your system, you lay it down, you create a great foundation, and then you put your building on top of it. And you know what? I don't like that floor plan a little bit. Maybe we'll move this over here. Maybe we'll switch this around. Maybe we'll do different fixtures. So you kind of it takes time to lay down that foundation. And now you talk about what we're doing, having our RTC, our Jackrabbit Wrestling Club, established. You talk about the Kurtenbach Family Wrestling Center.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's going to be the finest wrestling facility in the Big 12 Conference.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing is going to be a top 5 facility in the country. And we're not talking about a Power 5 here.
Right.
This isn't Iowa, Oklahoma State, Minnesota, Penn State. This is South Dakota State. And a program that is doing something at our mid-major that you don't see.
Yeah.
You don't. And that is monumental for wrestling in general, because it actually, what I hope happens, and Cornell built the first standalone wrestling facility in the country back in the early 2000s. They built the first, but it made an impact for Cornell 100%.
Oh, yeah.
But it made an impact in the wrestling community, but people chalk it up to, well, you're Cornell, you got money. It's the Ivy Leagues, you guys got money. No. People who have money because they don't just keep giving it away, right? I mean, you gotta get people passionate, you gotta get people excited to want to help. And that's what Rob did about getting that facility built. And here, hey, these dollars that we raised, it was privately funded money. I mean, the support came from the community, our alumni, our wrestling families. That's how we were able to raise, it's going to be over $5 million. That didn't happen because people don't care. I mean, they have an affinity towards wrestling in South Dakota State, and they want to see success. And so you talk about over the course of 4 years, and you talk about the things that we've been able to accomplish, All-Americans and dual meet wins and, program firsts. That's awesome. But I'll be honest with you, the thing that I'm most proud of at this point is being able to, this year, being able to give something back to not only the student athletes that we have here, give something back to our generous alumni and the friends of South Dakota State Wrestling, a state-of-the-art facility that they can call home because they came together to do it, right? That is something that I'm most proud of because it would not have happened. It would not have happened if it wasn't for the vision and passion of a select few individuals, to be honest with you. Right. And it's been a lot of work. And speaking of it, starting next week, we get back going. I mean, we've been waiting. We get through the winter. We've been waiting on Steel. So Steel should be here. That's been they've had a lag time in that, but Steel should be here. They'll get back to pouring the footings and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we're gonna open the doors to an absolute state of the art facility this year.
Yeah. Well, I think that says a lot about you leaving Cornell, coming here. I mean, that's sacrifice because you kind of had what you were looking for, but you came here. You didn't know a facility like this was in the books when and then you guys go out, raise that money. Now you're going to be rewarded with, something you probably couldn't have dreamed of.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you put one foot in front of the other and push forward what you can actually accomplish and things come to fruition. Because
for sure.
I don't know. I think a lot of people quit on stuff, so they'd never see those fruits.
Yeah.
But
it goes back to what we said before. That's what I want to very specific. That's what wrestling teaches you, right? Yep. Most people could say, "Oh, that's sports," in general. Yeah, to a certain extent, man. But that's what wrestling teaches you. I mean, because it's on you, right? We have a team, but you're going out there, and what you do on that mat helps your team. I don't need, Tom Brady passing me the ball, and it better be a good pass, or I ain't catching it. It's not that, and that's kind of the difference, and that's the one thing I love about not the opportunity, but just the experience that our guys are getting. It's on them. It really is. And we do everything we can to put them in positions to be successful. And that's why, I think I took to this sport because, man, there's nothing greater. Nothing greater than it. It's like, I forget what movie it is, but it's a football movie, and it's probably, I don't know.
Not Rudy, is it?
No, it's not Rudy. It's kind of it's a God. Darn it, I can't remember the movie, but it's a kind of, I don't want to say parody kind of football movie, but give me the ball. You know what I mean? I want the ball. In those tough times, give me the ball. And so that's what kind of I think the sport teaches you.
Well, I think it's funny that everybody considers it an individual sport, and by all accounts, by all physicality, visuals, it is. But you kind of never feel more connected to a team, and you can get lost in a football team. You can miss a block or whatever that can get, it's unseen. You can give up a major and lose the duel by 1 point. You can get teched. You could be the guy that gets pinned. You could you needed one more point for a major.
Yep. Or heck,
you just didn't
even
get.
Better, you did not give up the major.
Right.
And or you didn't give up the pin.
Right.
So I feel like wrestling, especially duels, it's like you're only as good as your weakest link. And you look at some of our duels this year and in years past, our margin for error, because let's be honest, when you come into a program and you got 14 guys, you don't have a lot of depth, all right? And you're trying to build that depth. You're trying to, create a roster. You're trying to do all these things. So your margin for error is so small. I mean, one big mistake and it's going down the tubes. So I think we're getting to a point where, we're starting to have a little bit of depth. We're starting to kind of fill the coffers a little with talent and what we need. But again, we're not there yet, and the margin for error is still small. And we need to go out and we need to wrestle, to our abilities to be able to compete against some of the top programs.
For sure. Well, yeah. I just wanted to ask you. I think we'll kind of start to close out, but what legacy do you want to leave on wrestling? Have you ever thought about what's your mark and what do you want people to remember you as, and what do you want, where do you want to go,
I never really thought about that per se,
Right.
because it's
that kind of comes organically with the work.
For me, it's never been about me.
Right.
It's never been about me. I want to. You have two types of coaches in this world, I believe. I think there's only two, and maybe someone could spit off a handful of others. But you have two types of coaches. You have coaches that will win at the expense of their athletes, and then you have coaches that will win with their athletes. And they don't seem that far different. They are completely different. I want at the end of the day, when all is said and done, that people can look back and say, "Wow, Damion or South Dakota State or their program and their coaches." I mean, they devoted everything to these kids, and I mean, like I said, we live a life of service, I feel, and that we were good mentors, and we raised these kids and put good people out into the world, because sports are done at some point for everybody, but that doesn't mean you can't carry on that work ethic and the values that were instilled, from your parents, from your coaches, from your mentors. I just hope that at the end of the day, when people look back, it's like, wow, look at the impact. Look at the impact on these kids' lives that was left. Hey, there are programs out there that, have won national titles. There are programs that have never won a national title. I don't think that defines, who. Listen, if Jay Robinson never won a national title, that does not define him in my eyes. Mm-hmm. Of the type of man he is. You talk about these individuals, and they all play special parts in our lives. And so I like the fact that Jay won a couple national titles, and I was able to be a part of that, which is awesome. But in my eyes, that doesn't change the man he is to me. And so it comes down to those relationships that you build. I mean, that's life. That's what makes the world go around. And I just want to do enough good and do enough good to my kids, the people, the community, that, hey, they pay it forward someday, and they give that back, because I got two little boys, man. I got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I want this to be available to my kids. I mean, with only 77, 78 Division I programs, right? Back when in the early 90s, I mean, you're talking 200 programs, and it's just declined. So like, I want this to be available for my kids if they so choose to wrestle. And if I don't do my part, and if the future, the kids that are in college, the high school kids, if they don't do their part, then the youngsters won't have that available to them. And so let's do everything we can. Let's do enough good. Let's create excitement, change perspective, invite new people, so this opportunity stays around for a long, long time. And so, yeah, I don't know if I gave you a direct answer to your question.
No, yeah.
But yeah, I think doing enough good, man, and mentoring these kids so they can pay it forward.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way to answer that question, but I think you answered the right way.
Yeah.
But
I'll try.
But nobody wants to. Everyone should do what they want to do. I think the fans, though, are so excited you're here and doing what you're doing, and they all wish you would stay here forever. And I mean, I think, for me, I think it would be cool that Damion Hahn changes this program, turns it around. In the future, kids go to the new wrestling facility, to the Damion Hahn wrestling room. I mean, that would be, because that the names don't mean anything, and I know you don't care. But it's pretty amazing. I know you probably sometimes think you haven't done enough. That's probably a wrestling coach. You just want, but that's why you're successful. Always grinding, always going for more. And I think you're going to I think whatever you put on paper is going to happen. I truly do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to agree with you because, we learn from our experiences. I mean, and you know what you like, you know what you don't like, and how do we fix? How do we change things or implement things so those feelings never happen? And it's never perfect, right? But if you care, if you honestly truly care, I mean, you're going to do what is necessary. If you have pride, you're going to do what is necessary to meet your expectations. I can tell you this: I did not come here. I didn't come here to be the status quo, mediocrity. That was not it. I came here because this program, I believe, can be a perennial powerhouse, and that's the goal. I mean, that is the absolute goal. I want to be a top 10 program year in and year out and contend for trophies. I believe this program can do that. You talk about All-Americans, national champions. Yes, that can be done here at South Dakota State. We've seen it. We've seen it happen. And you talked about, hey, staying here forever. I mean, Brookings is awesome. I mean, it's
kind of like a northern Stillwater, isn't it? You can't live in a suburb. You can't live in a suburb. It's a standalone.
Yeah.
But it's, like I did go to school at Oklahoma State too, and South Dakota State, and I do see similarities.
There are a lot of similarities
because they're kind of like a western standalone town where the town exists for the college, but people back the hell out of everything.
And the best word, community. That's what it's about. It's about a community, the relationship. So it's very unique. And when people actually get here and see it, they're like, oh, wow. Like it kind of, I don't want to say throws you for a loop, but like people don't expect that. When they think of colleges, it's always like cities or these big areas. No. That's not what it's always like. And so, I believe this program is going to be extremely successful. Rob Cole, he was speaking to a group of alumni, and this was, God, I don't know, maybe we took second in the country or something like that at Cornell. And Rob will tell you, he went to North Carolina. He was a 4-time All-American national champion, and he went to Cornell. That was his first coaching gig right out of college. I believe it was in 1989, the 89 season. Well, he didn't finish his degree. He started as a true freshman. So he goes 4 years, and then he was going to take his last year and finish up his degree, basically, as a redshirt year. And he's at practice or something, and Jack Spates of Cornell, he's the coach, calls Rob's house, because there was no cell phones, and Rachel, his wife, picks up the phone, and Jack basically offers Rob a job and tells Rachel, hey, listen, I'm offering Rob a job. And so Rachel accepted it on Rob's behalf. And Rob comes home, and Rachel's like, hey, we're going to Cornell. He's just like, what? He's like, yeah, we got you a job. And so they head up to Cornell. And he finishes his degree remotely up there, takes some Cornell classes, gets his degree. But that's not the story. So, but when he first got to Cornell, he talks about their wrestling room. He talks about the locker rooms. He talks about all these different things. And he goes, Damion, I'm not lying to you. We had one mat, and it was taped in about 17 different sections just to put it all together. Where we competed, it was like an old wooden gym, and the bleachers were benches. They'd roll out like benches, and that's how people came in and watched the duel. I mean, the attendance for these duels, I mean, he has everything, and it was like 50 people, 60 people. And he goes, I applied every year. I applied for every job out there, and I wouldn't even get a phone call. I mean, I was like, I'm getting out of this place, so on and so on. So I was listening to him one day, talked to a group of alumni, and he got there in 89, and he just left in 2021, but it took him about 20 years. About 15 or so years, and to really kind of get that machine going. And he made a comment to his alumni one day, and I'm sitting there listening, and I'm like, man, this guy's got it figured out. And he said, because people asked him, about, are you going to leave? Are you going to do this when you accomplish that? And what was the process? And he said, he goes, when I started realizing where this program could go and what I could do, I had to shut off all the other things. And I wasn't going to leave. Like, I'm here. Not every, the grass isn't always greener, this, that, and the other thing. And he goes, this is what I told myself. I said, don't do a good job in hopes of a better job. Do a better job to make your job great. And
I like that.
I was just like, oh my God, like, he's got it figured out.
Mm-hmm. And
again, it's go back to what we prioritize ourselves with. You talk about, the role models and what they have, and I want to be the best basketball player so I can drive the nicest car and stuff like that. Like that's not why we get into the things we get into. And you talk about South Dakota State and building something that stands the test of time, and something that will carry on. I mean, there's your legacy, right? Your legacy of where South Dakota State is in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I think that is important, and do what you can here and invest that time and effort, because hey, listen, I'll be honest with you, if I had no intention of being at South Dakota State, listen, I wouldn't have busted my butt for the last 4 years raising money to try and build a facility. If I knew I'd be gone in a couple of years, I would have put the best team together. I would have wrestled true freshmen. I would have thrown them out on the mat and let it fly, and then being like, see ya. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's a coach that will win at the expense of his athletes. Mm-hmm. And I think you're doing these kids a disservice if that's the case.
Yeah.
You know, let's position these kids to be the most successful they can. And if that means, hey, taking a little bit more time, I mean, that's what it is, you know. But at the end of the day, man, like, why am I in this position? Because of those kids. Mm-hmm. So, hey, let's do what we can to treat them right and do the things that are necessary to help them be successful. I mean, because if we don't have them, I'm not a coach anymore. I don't have a job, you know. So, yeah, and I think South Dakota State has the ability to do something extraordinary. I truly, truly do. You know, I wouldn't have come here if I didn't think otherwise. You know, that is the absolute truth.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's really saying something. But
Well, yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, it's because you know, we had it rolling at Cornell.
Yeah.
I mean, we had it rolling.
Oh, for sure.
And heck, I could have stayed there and just kind of rode it out. And again, I mean, and I love Rob Cole. I mean, love him to death. He still plays a major role in my life to this day. I mean, I talk to him all the time, and you know, I bounce ideas off of him. I mean, we talk, and it's just it was hard. It was hard leaving, you know, him, you know, because he is like a father to me. And so I look back and I wouldn't have done those things if I didn't believe, right? Mm-hmm. That had nothing to do with, you know, I got to be a head coach per se. Not that. There was a point where there was a lot of factors involved. You know, getting back to the Midwest, it was I wanted to apply some of the things that I've learned and see it come to fruition. You know, there are a lot of things. So yeah. This place is special, man. It is, and you know, you went here and
yep.
the trajectory's moving. You know, it's going in the right direction. And we just got to keep working. Got to keep working and helping these student athletes obtain their goals, because that's what's going to get us to where we need to be.
Absolutely. Well, I don't want to cap your whole day, but I really appreciate you sitting down with me. And you're a humble guy that just you're in it for the right reasons. You were kind of saying. I mean. And, I just really, really appreciate you sitting down with me. This was a lot of fun. It was more fun than I even expected. Yeah. So.
Well, hey, I'm a talker. We could literally probably sit here all day and just go back and forth. But
we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah,
maybe
man.
Pre-season.
Swing on down. This would be awesome. It's super enjoyable. So when we first started talking, you know, you shot me an email. I didn't know if it was going to be just a phone or a Zoom call. And then your last email was like, well, you know, where is it? You know, I'll get set up. And I'm like, oh boy, this is actually we're doing this. So no, this is awesome.
I feel like a conversation's never organic if you're even a phone call. Even over the computer with some lag, it's the same things are never said. Yeah. The same emotion. Nobody, you know, they're just looking into a camera. Can't wait for it to be over. You know, it's just it's a different thing. Yeah. And I'd rather not do that because it's just not something I would want to listen to or watch myself. So I just kind of enjoy sitting down with people and having a good conversation.
This is awesome. No, this is great. We will definitely do this again.
Perfect.
Yeah, for sure. Man, it'll be good.
Well, awesome. Thank you.
Bud. Yep. Thank you.